Could somebody just come in and say yes if the PowerPoint's up with you?
Hi Huw, ydy mae fyny.
Okay, great. Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay,
Right, thank you. Okay, well, what I'm going to do with you today, I'm going to discuss the power of moment. And it's an idea that I've had, well, it's an idea that I've borrowed from a book that I read. And I think it's a very, very powerful idea. And I think it really could resonate in schools. With the new curriculum, it really encourages us to take risks, and it really encourages, it gives us the power in our schools then to go after different ideas. One of the people that have been working, as somebody who's worked on the curriculum for the last 4 years, over 4 years, Mark Priestley is an academic from Scotland that's worked with us on the curriculum, and he argues that one of the biggest challenges that we face is, for me, the biggest issue is teacher autonomy. If a bird has been in the cage for 20 years, it's hardly surprising that if you open the cage, it might not want to come out. And I think that's what I see in a lot of schools. They want to try and continue what they're already doing, rather than have the freedom to go after new ideas and to really go for it. And I think that's what the new curriculum should encourage you to do, is really, really go for it. One of the questions that I always begin, in my mind is why? Why do we need this? Why should we go after this? And it's a work that's been done by Simon Sinek then. And as I said at the start, I hope everybody's got a pen and a piece of paper and could simply answer this one question. I'm going to ask you a very, very simple question. And hope you could answer this question then. Why did you become a teacher? I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. And hopefully you could jot 1 or 2 bullet points down and really, really think, why did you become a teacher? And, really simple then. We're living in a world basically that's driven by data. We have Estyn, we have in secondary schools GCSEs and A-level, we have the new curriculum, we have COVID protocols, we have all this thing that's been thrown at us, and we very often forget why we became a teacher and why we initially became a teacher. And I just like to relate, I'm very much into stories. If you've seen me doing Cynefin or the story of Wales and whatever, I love stories, and I love relating things to stories themselves. 2021 was a very difficult year for myself. It was a very, very difficult year for my family then. We lost 3 basically the main characters in our lives then. My father, who was on the left-hand side, passed away in February, and Elfed, who was my father-in-law, passed away 4 months later, and my uncle passed away just before Christmas. And it was a very, very different experience for each one of them, certainly for my father and Elfed. My father was an accountant, and he'd been an accountant throughout his life. He was worked diligently within the community. He was very, very community orientated. He was the secretary of the rugby club. He was the chairman of the choir in the village in Cwmturch then. He also worked then with the welfare hall. He was the treasurer of the welfare hall then, and he was also the treasurer of the chapel. Being an accountant, he could fit that in. And when my father passed away, we drove through the village. The hearse drove through the village, and it was in February. And if you can imagine, in February it was during lockdown, and it was it was a very difficult period. But the village came out, and the village came out to say goodbye, basically, and it really had a profound impact upon me, seeing everybody out on the street then. For Elfed, it was fairly different. He passed away 4 months later. He also done quite a lot in the community, but not maybe as much as my father then. And he also moved down to live near us, so we never went through Aberdare, where he was from then, to get him buried. But what happened to Elfed was a very different experience. Elfed was a teacher. He was a head of science in Mountain Ash Comprehensive School then. And after he passed away, we received a lot of letters written by former pupils saying how much of an impact that he had upon their lives, how he actually changed their lives. One of those letters was from a professor of chemistry in Oxford University, saying that he would never be a professor of chemistry, wasn't it for the inspiration that he had of Elfed. We had other teachers as well that sent us. We had 9 letters from Elfed saying how much that he actually changed their lives, and they were the person they were today because of Elfed himself then. My father was an accountant. We never received any similar letters for my father, although, you know, as I said, the community came out. And I think sometimes we lose and we forget that's the power that we have as teachers. We change people's lives. And we change, every one of us remembers the teacher that had a profound impact upon our lives. And if you reflect upon who you are, basically, you're a teacher, but you also change people's lives. And I think that is the superpower that all you as teachers possess. And we should never, ever really forget that. So moving forward then to the focus of today's work is the power of moments. It comes out of the work written by Chip and Dan Heath, and the book itself is called The Power of Moments. And what they argue then in the introduction, we all have defining moments in our lives, meaningful experiences that stand out in our memory. Many of them owe a great deal to chance, a lucky encounter with someone who becomes the love of your life, a new teacher who spots a talent you didn't know you had, a sudden loss that upends the certainties of our life, a realization that you don't want to spend one more day in your job. What I want you to do then, as regards this task, this is a task, this is the workshop that I do, and it takes up most of the morning. Unfortunately, I've got to do this in an hour, so I've got to really zap through it. But the first task is think of a moment that has had a profound impact upon your life. Normally, I'd ask you to share it with others and so on, but think of a moment that had a profound impact upon your life. One single moment, you know, that really changed things for you personally then. The argument then, you know, you could write it down, you could just think of it in your head. As I said, due to timing, I've really got to zip on through this. But should we just wait for those defining moments to happen? Should we just take a backward step and just leave them come over us? And the argument is no, you know, that's the argument that Chip and Dan Heath argue. Defining moments shape our lives, but we don't have to wait for them to happen. We can be the authors of them. Teachers should be encouraged to design lessons that students reflect on in years to come. I really wonder, how many lessons have you ever taught where pupils really think about it in, you know, a few years' time and think, oh, I remember that lesson, I remember that lesson. They argue that we should do that. So hopefully my aim today quickly then is to examine what makes a particular experience memorable. And secondly, then discover how to create defining moments. How can we in schools create these defining moments that will have an impact, true impact upon our learners in our schools then? The next task is discuss what makes a particular experience memorable and meaningful. I'm not going to ask you to do this, as I said, due to time constraints. But a man named Ray Baumeister, Professor Ray Baumeister, psychologist then, notes down 5 elements. He argues that the 5 elements to creating these moments. And he argues the first one is elevation. Elevation, defining moments rise above the everyday. It's not the normal lesson, it's the wow factor, what rises above. They provoke not just short-term happiness, like laughing at a friend, a joke, but memorable delight. Moments of elevation transcend the normal course of events. They are literally extraordinary. We should be, in our schools, look towards to create elevated moments. Also then, moments of pride. Pride, defining moments capture us at our best. Moments of achievement, moments of courage, the success of Couch to 5K. One of the things massively as regards Couch to 5K is that it creates moments of pride throughout. You know, you begin by walking a short distance, then you begin by walking and running, and it builds these moments, these magical moments ultimately up, and it builds your pride until ultimately you'll be able to run for 5K program, because it included milestone moments that built on each other on the journey then towards the ultimate goal. That's what we should be creating in schools as well within our lessons. It's also a moment of insight. Defining moments rewire our understanding of ourselves or the world. For example, this is the person I'm going to marry. You know, it has a profound impact. It's sort of that moment, wow, it changes you. Or the new curriculum for Wales challenges us to change our teaching styles. One of the things with the new curriculum is let's go for it. Let's really adapt to different ideas and different styles of teaching. Moments of connection then, defining moments are very often social events such as weddings, graduations, baptisms, holidays, sporting events. These moments can be viewed as a kind of unifying event in order to make relationships stronger. There is a fifth element, and the fifth element is probably something we won't want to develop within our schools. It's trauma. It's brought about by heartbreak or grief. We wouldn't really want to develop that within our schools. So what are these? So I've tried to make them Welsh. They're all basically epic moments. This is what we need to develop within our schools, is these epic moments, I'd argue. And why are they important? Because we value them. We create treasure chests of moments. These are moments that are really, really personal to us. And we want to maintain that, and we keep mementos in order to remember these because they're so meaningful for us. For example, elevation, a love letter, a program, a ticket to a rugby game, or a well-worn t-shirt. You know, we want to keep that program. We want to keep that ticket to a concert or whatever that we attended because it reminds us of that special moment of elevation. Equally, then, a moment of pride. Thank you cards. Very often when our pupils leave our schools, they hand us thank you cards. We keep those from former pupils. Certificates that we've achieved, trophies maybe. Very often if our pupils achieve and our sons and daughters achieve trophies, the pride that you feel as regards that. We hold on to these because they're special moments. And it's an opportunity to remember those moments. Moments of insight, quotes or articles that moved you. You know, one is Pinterest and all this sort of thing. You know, we keep those sort of quotes and so on. Books that change your life on your view of the world, for example. And also then the connection. You know, the holiday, the wedding photos, the family photos that we keep on our fridges, be that on our fridge doors, being on the mantelpiece and so on then, and the scrapbooks that we keep. They're all magical moments, and we hold on to those magical moments by keeping sort of a treasure chest of those moments. So the example is moments matter, you know. We should not leave them to chance, they argue. As teachers, we have an amazing opportunity to provide moments of elevation, pride, insight, and connection. All it takes is imagination, effort, and preparation. And that's what I want to discuss with you today. And if I had the opportunity, I would allow you to see this video. And this is an amazing moment then. It's a radiology department in a children's hospital in the United States then. The PowerPoint itself will be uploaded onto our website, and you will be able to download the PowerPoint and look at the video. And basically what happens in this video, it's a radiology department, so they need to go through the scanner. What happened to about 80–90% of young people had to be sedated before they went through the scanner. But they decided, well, if we make this into a moment, a very special moment, and an event, for example, 80–90% of the people of the young people didn't need to be sedated because they bought into the story of the scanner itself. And this was one example. They said it's a pirate ship. You're going through the pirate ship, and the pirate ship will scan you in order to find out if you're a pirate and so on. And the young learners bought into it. And it's amazing the power of that moment, how it changes the people who are actually very, very ill, that they don't need to be sedated anymore then. It's a different way of looking at things, as I said. Task, can you think of a remarkable teaching moment that you've created or you've witnessed? You know, we all very often see, and we leave our class and saying, wow, that was, yeah, that really works, sort of thing, you know, and it gives us an uplift. One of the biggest ones that I've ever experienced was getting Year 7. I was a secondary school teacher, I was a history teacher, but in humanities, and I was beginning, before I left teaching, I was beginning to look at what was happening in other countries and really experimenting on some of this. So rather than teaching the Battle of Hastings in 1066, I said, no, I'm going to go differently. I'm going to develop a new way of thinking. I'm going to develop these ideas that I've seen in Finland, in Canada, in New Zealand, and so on. And one of the things that I came across was public speaking. We very often ask our pupils to speak, and we ask them to present information, but do we really teach them how to present? And I thought, no, I don't. I've never ever taught the pupil. There's a tendency now, it has changed in secondary schools, and for GCSE, English and Welsh, they are taught how to do public speaking. But why wait for year 10? Shouldn't we be teaching this down? And this is a series of lessons that I prepared. These are all the PowerPoints that they're how to present. And I asked them to write a speech, a 500-word speech. Then we look at in the second one at adapting and learning and looking upon different aspects of that. In the third one then, we looked at Martin Luther King. We looked at different aspects then, how to look at, different aspects such as anaphora. We were looking. I'm looking at my notes then to see what they are. So rhetoric, art of persuasion, alliteration, then repeating the same letter. Anaphora, then repeating the same phrase. I have a dream. I have a dream. These are some of the techniques that Martin Luther King were doing in his most famous speech in the world. And if it was good enough for that, it's certainly good enough for our pupils. And I encourage them to develop that. The final one then was how to perform, and we looked at YouTube clips then of performances made by a wide variety of different people then, from Carwyn Jones, who was at the time then the Minister for Wales, and they said, "Sir, that's so boring. He doesn't use any facial expression or any, he's not smiling very often." And then we looked at Michael Sheen, and Michael Sheen was talking about the health service, and it was really, really powerful the way he spoke and that sort of thing, So they were interpreting body language, they were taking facial recognition, facial, and the Hoyle and so on that they were in there. And I said, well, that's the styles you want to adopt them. There was also one example then that was produced by, I can't remember her name now. I can't remember. But, it was all different techniques and they were looking at that. So what happened then, for the first time ever, I said, right, you got a 500-word presentation. You can do it on anything. And the pupils turned to me and said, right, what can we do it on? Anything. Okay, but what, sir? And I've said anything. People really, really found it difficult to do it on anything. And certainly to the higher ability pupils, they were coming back to me, can I do it on this, if you think so? Yeah, but what do you think, sir? Yeah, if you want to, on anything. And that freedom, they found it very difficult. And one pupil, I can remember one pupil, and this is the profound moment that changed me as a teacher then. He said, and he was a pain. He was a year 7 pupil. He was always attention seeking, and he wanted attention throughout, and he knew how to play the system. He's a very intelligent pupil, but he was an absolute pain in the backside. He couldn't sit in his seat. He'd very often wander around the classroom, and he'd cause disruption wherever he could. And he made a presentation, and I knew a little bit about his background. I knew that his father had passed away. And he was his mother then. It was a Welsh medium school, but his mother wasn't from was from France, but couldn't help him maybe with his work then. But his father had passed away, and one of the last things that his father said, "I want my son to go to a Welsh medium secondary school." His brother then played cricket for Wales, so his brother had a lot of attention. And he started his speech, and he said, "I know, in lessons that I want attention." And I know, and he started talking about his life, and he started talking about how he missed his father and the fact that his brother was getting so much attention. And he knew that he was playing up and he wanted attention and everything. And he was sorry for all that. And it was so powerful. Basically, I think almost everybody in the class at the end were crying. And I definitely had a tear in my eye. And I really thought, wow, the power. I've never, ever given my learners that opportunity. And I said, once I gave that opportunity, wow, it just blew my mind away. And I certainly thought, oh, this is teaching, you can stuff your Battle of Hastings in 1066. This is one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had within the classroom itself then. So how do we create defining moments? Right, okay, I bought into this now. Yeah, I see the point of this, and I think that we do need to create defining moments within our classrooms. One of the things that we need to do is building peaks. Defining moments are experiences that rise above the routine. They make us feel engaged, happy, amazed, and motivated. So the question is, think about your pupils. What peaks have they experienced? What peaks did they experience during their time in your school itself then? Very often in a secondary school, we actually find out what are their peaks and what are the experiences they look back at. Because very often they do a year 13 assembly right at the end, just before they leave to sit their A levels and so on. Very often a year 13 in our school would make an assembly and would talk about their time in the school and reminisce about their time in the school. And they very often talk about their trips, their skiing trip, I'd organise the trip to America every year. The trip to America that they attended in year 11, the rugby games, the balls they attended, the musical, the school musical, for example. But they never, ever spoke about lessons. They never, ever said anything academic. That's the reason why they were in the school, is in order to achieve academically. But they never, ever mentioned anything academic or any lessons. And I wondered why. Why do we do that? We don't create these experiences for our pupils. And this is a sort of a normal school day, you know, the positive and the negative. And this is sort of, you know, this is the day as our pupils go through. And very often, from my perspective, my son's just walked in the door. And if I asked him today, and I know the answer before I even ask, what happened in school today? Normal day. Normal day. What did you do? Oh, nothing really. It was just normal. Yeah, but what? No, oh, just normal. And that's the answer we get. Nothing wow, nothing spectacular. He is, by the way, in year 11, so I wouldn't expect anything else from him. But, you know, it's almost a normal day. Where is the peak? Where is the opportunities that they get? And this is what Chip and Dan Heath say. Schools need to be more like sports. In sports, there's a game. We run schools like it's a non-stop practice. You never get a game. Nobody would train for a team if they never played a game. What is the game for our students? Where is the opportunity? Where is the game? Where are the peaks for our learners? In the drama and music department, you could argue there are shows, you know, then this is the show that was created in the school every year. And that's a massive peak, you know, the opportunity for them to appear on the theatre and on the stage. And there's a lot of work that goes into that then. Equally then in sports, for example, if you look at this graph, for example, you can see the practices. These are the negative experiences, you know. They've got to practice for the rugby, for the netball, for the hockey. And, you know, on a windswept, raining evening and you're going to be stuck out there on the field, it's not, you know, it doesn't promote, you know, well-being, you could argue. But the games, you know, they're there for the game, for the peak, for playing the actual games themselves then. And that outweighs then the practices and everything they go through. Thinking long term then, how important are peaks to us? How important are these peaks to us in our lives? Well, if you think, you know, one of the things that I look upon is Disney. And I think of Disney as amazing. I really enjoy taking my children to Disney and being there in Disney. But if you look at a day in Disney and the actual time you're there, it's very negative experience. You're queuing up. Oh, you're looking at the prices that you have to pay. Have you seen the price of this burger? Have you seen the price here, sort of thing? You're very irritable very often. But you forget about that. And when you remember, and if you look back at your time in Disney, what do you remember? You remember the peaks. You remember the ride on the Big Thunder Mountain. You remember the Tower of Terror. You remember meeting Mickey and Donald and the pictures that those that your children had with those characters. You don't remember the negativity. You don't remember any of those negative aspects. And that's what we need. That's what we need in our lessons. We need the peaks. Okay, so how do we get these peaks? Well, the three ways to build peaks. One is to boost the sensory appeal. The second then is to raise the stakes. And thirdly, then break the script. So these are the ideas that we have for developing these magical moments. Turn up the volume and reality. And we do this naturally. We don't do this without even thinking, really. For example, in weddings, we have flowers, we have food, we have music, we have dancing. We're turning up the volume on the event. Clothes are very often, for example, wedding dresses, Welsh shirts. When we go to see Wales play, when we go and see the rugby games, for example, we wear the international jerseys. For our graduation ceremonies, we wear cap and gowns, for example. We boost the sensory appeal during those opportunities. Equally then, raise the stakes, add an element of pressure, a competition, a game, a performance, a deadline, a public commitment. You know, they're aiming towards something. They're raising the stakes. We need to complete this work because we will be presenting them. We need to complete this work because we have a deadline. We have a commitment to show this to our parents, for example. Break the script. Defy people's expectations of how an experience will unfold. And these are some of the examples that I have. Originally, I just have you think of some of these experiences. one of the things is exhibitions, and I'm a massive fan of exhibitions. Very often, the only time that parents actually come into a school is for a parents' evening. Shouldn't we be encouraging our parents more into our schools to see the work of our pupils? You know, we draw them in very often for a show, maybe the Christmas show, but should we draw them in to actually see our pupils work, you know, and build this up, for example, as a science exhibition? Why simply a science exhibition? This is history, for example, you know, getting our pupils to work creatively and creating some of these that can show. One of the other examples that I have is Days That Shook the World. However, the Days That Shook the World, it developed out of getting them to do presentations. So they originally did a single presentation, and now I wanted them to do a group presentation. So the idea was, think of a day that shook the world in order to present to the rest of the class. And what they did with the day that shook the world, then they chose different days, you know, and they presented it to the class themselves. And, you know, we had a class of 30 pupils, and each one of them were working in 3 or 4 then to present the day that shook the world. Then we had the pupils to say, what was the most defining moment? What was the best presentation? And they chose that best presentation and said, right, we're going to raise the stakes. We're going to do this as a class presentation. And what happened then was all that class worked on that presentation. They decided to do a drama on it. They decided to do a PowerPoint. They decided to make a song as regards it. They developed it. And what had happened then, we collapsed the curriculum. There was 6 Year 7 classes. We brought them all into the hall for an afternoon. And each class then wouldn't simply present to their class. They presented to everybody within that year. And we had the head there, we had everybody sitting in. And how powerful that was. They knew they were presenting to everything. That's a magical moment. Another magical moment is, why should pupils remain in school? This is the courthouse in Brecon. And one of the things in the book is called The Trial of Human Nature. And it comes from Lord of the Flies. Are people born evil, or are people good? Are people good, or are people bad, sort of thing? And they take the pupils to the court case and hold an argument within the court itself then. All our courts actually only sit for a day or maybe 2 days a week. They're empty. Ask, can we use the court? Can we bring our pupils in to have an argument about something or other? It could be in anything, basically, you know, global warming, for and against, everything like that. So, for example, raise the stakes. You know, if you're doing the trial of human nature, bring Gandhi, somebody dressed up as Gandhi, bring somebody dressed up as Donald Trump, bring somebody dressed up as Darth Vader. Make the other pupils, who are the solicitors, wear suits, wear a shirt and tie, bring in a judge and everything with that, bring in their parents, raise the stakes. And what happened then, this is what happened with the trial of human nature, is the positive and negative experiences, but there's a massive buzz around the trial of human nature. And what I argue with the trial of human nature, don't make it a one-off. Make it that it happens yearly. So brothers and sisters look forward. I remember when my brother went down to the courthouse, and we'll be doing that next year. We'll be going down to the court case and arguing the case. And elevate it, make it something that happens every year in our school, sort of thing. Raise the stakes. The main task I'd ask you to do normally then, I'd ask you to think in moments and think of regards, how can we create these magical moments? How can we create peaks within our teaching that would lead somewhere? And I'd normally ask you to hold a discussion, and I'd spend some time working with that. I work with my Sotherwen school, so I provided them with examples that they could work in within their community. But think of your community. One of the things that you have, for example, then is theatres. This is the Adelina Patti Theatre in just outside Ysgrifenllais then. I say, you know, humanities department, work on the history of Adelina Patti. Think of why, before the pupils actually go there, they should understand what the theatre, why the theatre was there. Ask them to perform on that theatre. Outside in every community, we have these massive posters that tell the history. This is, for example, of Carmarthenshire, but it's around everywhere in Wales. Why can't we create one of those for our schools? These massive billboards almost of information as regards our schools. You know, ask for grants. We could develop this. You know, the history of our school, for example. The other example here is in Ysgrifenllais. There's a hospital in Ysgrifenllais then. There are 5 wards. They've only used 2. 3 wards are totally and utterly empty. Can't we make something and ask, can we come into the wards? Can we use those wards for teaching experiences? Equally then, I'd argue that for secondary schools, why aren't we taking our secondary schools pupils back to primary schools and encouraging them to teach younger pupils? Why can't you get, if you're in a primary school, why can't you get year 6 pupils teaching down the school, teaching them, making a lesson, preparing the lesson, encouraging them to teach the younger pupils and move that down? And I'd really, really encourage you to look, raise the stakes. Another thing that we did in our school then was we did a walk-in tour of Carmarthenshire. This is Carmarthenshire. We were very fortunate, make use of who your parents are. One of our parents was an app developer and he worked on apps. And I said, could you create an app for us? And he said, yeah, okay, I could work on one. And basically, this is Hewlydd Heddwch. Hewlydd Heddwch is still in the App Store. So if you went in the App Store, if you wrote it down, you could download it. And basically what I had pupils looking at the map of Carmarthenshire and walking tour. And what they have then, they took photos of different places and different histories, and they wrote down the history of that location then. And if you look on the left-hand side, if you clicked on Park Hines, it would give you the direction to the next one. And the next one then would be the Presbyterian College in Carmarthen, how to get there, sort of thing, So encouraging you to think big ideas and build the peaks up. But I also warn you, one of the things that I'd say, there's a massive warning. And I'd encourage you, beware the soul-sucking force of reasonableness. Otherwise, you risk deflating your peaks. Pupils remember mad, epic moments. Don't go for safety, I'd argue. Go for the epic moments. Go for the mad moments. Go for the things that once your pupils leave school and they want to hold an assembly, be that in year 6 or be that in year 13, they remember that moment. Oh, I remember in year 4 we did that. Remember us doing that. We worked throughout the period building up to that special peak then. Equally then, as George Bernard Shaw say, all progress depends on the unreasonable man, I've added, or woman. Be unreasonable, be bonkers. I encourage you to be bonkers, in my opinion, anyway. There's also then the idea, it's not my job. At this point, hopefully that you're saying, yeah, I can see the point of all this, and I can really see why we need to probably do this. And there's one reason, that doesn't happen, or it does happen one-off and it doesn't happen again then. And it's because it's not my job. Very often when I was working as a head of history in Bromworthing School in Carmarthen then, there was a coat of armour, and we could get the coat of armour every year from the archives. And I'd bring the coat of armour, I'd go into the archives, get the coat of armour, bring it in, and year 7 would dress up in the coat of armour. I'd get them walking around the school in there. It was very, very heavy and so on. And the other teachers would say, oh, I haven't got time to go and get it. But once it arrived, each one of those teachers wanted to borrow it. Oh, can I use it for my lesson? Can I use it? I say, yeah, fine. And I said, right, can you take it back? Oh, whenever it came to taking it back, they couldn't take it back. So within 2 weeks, it was me taking it back. I did it for about 4 or 5 years. And I just got fed up because everybody else was using it and everybody was willing to buy into it. But none of them would actually say, it's not my job. You're the head of department. You go and get it, sort of thing, It's everybody's job to ensure that this works, basically. Because, if we adopt this, it's not my job. This is what happens, basically. The path doesn't actually go through the hole. The train above then you can't actually run on those tracks anymore. And rather than putting liquid soap in a soap dispenser, we put actually a bar of soap. And if you look at the right-hand corner, this is my favourite one, where the ladder is actually left behind, but they build around it, sort of thing. So they put the wood in between, and they even tile it, but the ladder is still as regards on the right-hand side. It's not my job. If you want to create magical moment, it's everybody's job. And we should be really, really pushing towards it. It's not down to the deputy head or the heads in primary school to create magic moments. It's down to all of us. And this is maybe my challenge to you. I come to the end then, and I know I've zipped through it, and I know I've probably gone too fast. I've gone psychopathically fast, maybe to a certain extent, because I wanted to get it all in. As I said, normally I spend a lot of time doing this, and there's a lot of discussions, a lot of ideas that are spread by schools and by teachers as regards how we can create these magical moments. One of the things that I argue with magical moments is continue them. Because what happens very, very often, you do it for 1 year, And he said, oh, yeah, right. And we'll leave it, sort of thing. If you want to create that magical moment again, you probably do it in another 2-3 years' time. But every year you've got new pupils. And every year those new pupils, that experience will be totally new for those pupils. And to build a massive experience, it's having it done every year that builds that. Because, you know, brothers speak to brothers and sisters, you know, talk about that experience. And the younger ones really want to relive that experience very, very often. As I said, one of the things that I do is when I was teaching, I used to take pupils out to the United States of America, and I used to take them every year. And it was the trip in our school. It was a very, very popular trip. And I wasn't, you know, at the start, didn't really buy into it because I didn't really thought, you know, going to America was very, very expensive. And I did it for the first time I did it, and I don't know about this, I said, because it's so expensive. But I remember a parent coming up to me and saying simply, oh, I'm so glad that you've given my son the opportunity to go to the United States because his sister will go in 2 years' time. We as a family could never afford it, but we will be able to afford one to go at a time. And I thought, I never thought of it like that. I just thought it was really, really expensive. And so what we do, we used to take year 11 pupils. And throughout their school, everybody knew from year 7 onwards that their trip was the America trip. And in year 11, then we used to take 100 to 140 pupils. I think 140 pupils, all in year 11, was the biggest we'd taken out to the United States. We spent 3 nights in New York and 3 nights in Washington. If you've been to New York, this is a picture of Times Square and the red steps in Times Square. And when we were out there, very often I saw the schools from Wales, and I thought, the penny drop moment for me then. I'd forgotten to take the sound. It's just a song, but you can read all the subtitles. And one of the things was, right, we could do a flash mob. And that's what I did. I contacted the other schools that were out in the United States at that time and contacted and said, right, listen, could you be in Times Square at 6 o'clock on a Monday night? And if you look at the right-hand side, the woman in the bikini, it's from American Eagle, and they constantly change it. And I went in there and I said, could you put the Welsh flag up? And they said, what do you mean the Welsh flag? I said, the Welsh flag, the dragon. So they put it up, and they put it up on the sign. It was massive, you know. And on the steps then, I collected all these Welsh people together, and it became sort of, you know, it went electric. It went around everywhere. And not only pupils, we had people that were in New York during that period. It went around, and everybody, we collected, I think it must have been about 2,000 to 3,000 Welsh people in the centre then. And this is what happened. This is the video that appeared then. It was filmed, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. And I forgot to press. Once you see it, download it, because you can see what they do then. They sing the national anthem. So they're all there in the centre of Times Square singing the national anthem at 6 o'clock. And what happened then, it was filmed live. There are cameras in Times Square, and parents at home then were looking on the computers and seeing this mad bunch of Welsh people right in the centre of New York singing the anthem itself. One of my heroes is a man named Daniel Kahneman. And Daniel Kahneman, in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, says, our lives are measured in moments, and defining moments are the ones that endure in our memories. They're ones that we live by. And your mission as school teachers then, should you choose to accept it, is to create those magical moments for our pupils. Let's not accept simply lessons. Let's build peaks. Let's create those wow magical moments for our learners. And I'd like to end there maybe. And I know I've zipped through it, and I know I've gone bonkers fast. But you know, hopefully you've had the ideas with that then. So different fawr chi gyd. Thank you very much. I now try to get all this down. And I'm going to stop recording. So if anybody wants to come in,